is the last book of the Bible that was written. Okay? It's not only the last gospel in the order that it was put in the Bible, but it was actually the last book that was written, the Gospel of John. There are no genealogies in the book of John. You won't see in John like son of Adam, and Adam begot son, and Adam begot son, and whoever begot whatever. No, you don't see that in the Gospel of John. There are no genealogies, okay? You won't see either parables. There are no parables in the Gospel of John. What you will see in the Gospel of John is long speeches that Jesus did talking with people, but no parables. There's no story of Jesus' birth, no story of Jesus' childhood. John goes from saying who Jesus is right into Jesus doing ministry, okay, which is very interesting. What else? There is no story of the Passover celebration before the crucifixion. John doesn't talk about that. Now, John is the only one that talks about the foot washing ceremony. But Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they don't talk about that. John is the only one, excuse me, who records the 7 I am statements that Jesus said. I don't remember. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, I am the resurrection, and so forth. The other Gospels don't talk about that, don't mention that. And then John also records like this specific encounters that Jesus had with certain individuals that the other Gospels don't mention. Like the story and the encounter of Jesus and Nicodemus, no mention in the other Gospels but John. The encounter of Jesus and the Samaritan woman, only John talks about that. The resurrection of Lazarus and how he interacted with Lazarus' sisters, only John talks about that. And of course, John is also unique because he is very intentional in wanting to show and prove that Jesus is not only the Son of God, Jesus is God. Okay? So with that in mind, there is one more thing that you won't see in the Gospel of John, and that is miracles. Because John don't call them miracles. Every miracle that we will call it miracle, John calls it signs. Jesus did a sign. Okay? So what I want to share with you today is the first sign or the first miracle that we know Jesus performed in his ministry. And this is recorded in John chapter 2, and we're going to read the story. It says, the next day there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. The wine supply ran out during the festivities, so Jesus' mother told him, hey, they have no more wine. Dear woman, that's not our problem, Jesus replied. My time has not yet come. But his mother told the servants, do whatever he tells you. Standing nearby were 6 stone water jars used for Jewish ceremonial washing. Each could hold 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus told the servants, fill the jars with water. When the jars had been filled, he said, now dip some out and take it to the master of ceremonies. So the servants followed his instructions. When the master of ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from, though of course the servants knew, he called the bridegroom over and said, a host always serves the best wine first. Then, when everyone has had a lot to drink, he brings out the less expensive wine. But you have kept the best until now. This miraculous sign at Cana in Galilee was the first time Jesus revealed his glory, and his disciples, what? Believed in him. This is a good story. I mean, we've heard about it since we were in Sabbath school class when we were younger. But I want to share with you 4 lessons that I take from this story. The first sign or the first miracle that Jesus performed. And the first one is that following Jesus is an absolute adventure. Okay? Jesus is invited to a wedding with his disciples. And by the way, if you look at the Gospels, you will realize that Jesus was an extremely social person. He was always in wedding celebrations. He was in feasts. He was always surrounded with people, eating and drinking with people, just having a good social time. And I like that about Jesus because for me, there is no better way for you to get to know someone than sitting at a table or sitting somewhere or standing, sharing a meal and eating together. Because when that happens, the inevitable takes place, and that is talking. You just engage in conversation when you're doing that. Now, mind that in the times of Jesus, weddings lasted for days, even weeks. There are some historians that have recorded that there was weddings that lasted 7 weeks, like not the wedding, like the wedding feast. 7 weeks. Adventure is about breaking through barriers and having new experiences. That's what an adventure is. It's breaking barriers and having new experiences. And with Jesus, that's exactly what you expect. I don't know, can you imagine being one of the guests or being one of the disciples that witnessed the sign or the miracle of turning water into wine? Or witnessing the resurrection of Lazarus? Or the walking on water from Peter? I mean, every day with Jesus was like, okay, what's going to happen today? Yesterday you raised a dead man, what are you going to do today? Like the expectation is always like, what's going to happen? What's new? And I wonder, what about us today? Do we see God opening doors that were impossible to open? Do we see Jesus answering prayers that we thought were impossible to answer? Have you experienced this adventure that it is walking and following Jesus? Because with Jesus, everything that you ever thought impossible, suddenly it's real and tangible. So life with Jesus is an absolute adventure. Lesson number 2, do whatever Jesus says. If we go to the Bible, and I'm going to look it up because I don't have the text here on the screen, but if you go to John chapter 2 again, on verse 5, notice what happened. Of course, they ran out of wine, and the Bible says this on verse 5. Verse 4, dear woman, that's not our problem. Jesus replied, my time has not yet come. But his mother told the servants, do whatever he tells you. Are we willing to do whatever Jesus tells us? Even if it doesn't make sense? Even if your friends don't like it? Even if it means that you might lose some friends in the process or family? Even if it sounds ridiculous? Are we really willing to do whatever Jesus says? In the story, when people did exactly as Jesus did, they experienced a miracle. And remember when Jesus told 2 disciples, and the gospel and the Bibles are full of these stories. When Jesus asked somebody to do something and they follow through, something amazing happens afterwards. Remember the story of the 2 disciples that were fishing all day? Jesus got in a boat and Jesus was preaching, and then he told these 2 disciples to go farther into the ocean and cast the nets. I think it was Peter and Andrew. Notice what happened in the story. This is recorded in, I think it's Luke chapter 5, verses 4 through 7. When Jesus had finished speaking, he said to Simon, now go out where it is deeper and let down your nets to catch some fish. Remember, Jesus, the lesson here is do whatever Jesus says. And Jesus is telling these 2 experienced fishermen, go deeper and cast your nets so you can get some fish. And of course, Simon Peter replied, we've worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing. But if you say so, I'll let the nets down again. And in this time, The nets were so full of fish, they began to tear. A shout for help brought their partners in the other boat, and soon both boats were filled with fish and on the verge of sinking. I pray that we'll be willing to do whatever the Lord asks. Because if we know Jesus, we know that whatever He asks is always for our benefit. It's never to take fun out of your life. It's never to make your life miserable. It's never for you to suffer because you need to suffer in order to learn some lessons. No, every time God asks you to do something, it's for our good. The problem is that in order for us to do whatever the Lord says, we need to trust Him. And sometimes, because we can't see the end from the beginning, because we have gone through some experiences in the past, we hesitate. And we don't trust Him. We're like, no, Jesus, if I do that again, I remember what happened last time. I don't want to go through that again. So we hesitate. I mean, the stories can go on and on in the Bible. Remember the 10 lepers that wanted Jesus to heal them. And Jesus says, go, show yourself to the priest, and on your way you'll be healed. And they did as Jesus said, and what happened? Exactly what Jesus said. They got healed in the process. How about the man who was blind? And Jesus puts some mud in his eyes and tells him, go wash yourself in this pool and you recover your sight. He did as Jesus said, and he recovered the sight. How about the guy in the pool of Bethesda? 38 years, a lame. He couldn't walk. And Jesus shows up and tells him after a brief conversation, get up, pick up your mat and walk. And because he did, he walked. So church, every time Jesus tells you to do something, whatever it is, even if it sounds like the most insane thing, I pray that the Spirit will give us the courage to do it. Because afterwards, we're just going to see God's glory even more so. What do I mean by that? We're going to see God in a way that we didn't see Him before. We will experience a part of God that we have not experienced before. And we're going to grow in our relationship. And ultimately, it's absolutely always going to be the best for us. So we need to do what He says, because it will always be for our good. When the servants actually did as Jesus instructed, they don't only witness the transformation of water into wine, but in the process, they blessed the bride and the groom. So what does that mean? Another lesson here. When we do what Jesus tells us to do, we might not be the only one blessed, but we might be a blessing to someone else unbeknown to them. So, do whatever Jesus says. Lesson number 3. Jesus doesn't want good things for you. He wants the best. And I love this. Verses 9 and 10 from John 2. Let's read them real quick. When the master of ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from, though of course the servants knew, he called the bridegroom over. A host always serves the best wine first, he said. Then when everyone has had a lot to drink, he brings out the less expensive wine. But you have kept the best until now. Is there a difference between good and best? I'll give you an example. And I don't like Italian food that much. There's only a few items that I love of Italian food. One of the ones that I don't like, it's pizza, and most of you know that already. But there's one thing that I love about Italian cuisine, and that is lasagna. Love lasagna. So I've gone to Olive Garden, which is kind of an American, Italian restaurant. And then I've gone to Carrabba's, which is, maybe it's also American Italian, but I think it's more Italian than American, which I like Carrabba's more than Olive Garden. And I've tasted their lasagna, and their lasagna is really good. But I'll tell you this, Sasha's lasagna is the best. Okay? Hands down. I love Sasha's lasagna over anyone. That's the best. The other ones are good, but there's always something that surpasses what's good. That's the best. And church, I want to tell you today that that's exactly what God wants to give you. God doesn't just want to give you good things. God is interested in giving you the absolute best in everything. Like in this story, the best wine was always served first, but when Jesus shows up and does a miracle, he actually brings something that passed the good wine or the best wine for them. So, I don't know if you're getting this. Jesus always provides not just good things, but the best things. And I don't know if right now you are content with your job, with your relationships, with your finances, with your spiritual life. Maybe if you've hit a plateau and you said, well, I feel good. Like my relationship with my wife or my husband, it's good. My finances, they're good. My spiritual life is good. I feel solid. But God wants to take that up a notch. And he doesn't want you to settle for what's good. He wants you to strive for the best. And the best is only something he can provide. And he wants to provide that for you. And notice when did Jesus provide the very best? It wasn't at the beginning of the feast. It was when they ran out of wine. What does that mean? It means that God is an expert, and I don't know why God does this. I think it's because of us. Because if he gives us the very best from the beginning, we might not appreciate it that much. But there is something that happens when you run out of something that makes you value what you get next. And I don't know if you can relate to this. There are two theologians I want to quote to you. The first one is F.D. Nichols, an old Adventist theologian, that he says, heaven always provides its best things last for those who patiently wait. Can you imagine what would have happened if Jesus would have been incarnated a generation after Adam and Eve sinned? And I don't know, maybe that's a bad example. But God purposely waited for the incarnation for years and years and millennia because it was going to be the best. Here we're thinking, no, we need it first because if I have it first, then I'm going to enjoy it more. And God goes like, no, if I give it now that to you, you're not going to enjoy it as much. I know the exact time when I'm going to provide you the very best. So that's what F.D. Nichols says. Heaven always provides the best things last for those who patiently wait. And then C.G. Cross, also an old theologian, as the theologian said, by mentioning earlier that the 6 jars held 20 or 30 gallons each, the evangelist implies that the amount of wine Jesus will provide was substantial, even extravagant. Can you imagine, and I'm not good at math, but 20 times 6, 120? Is that right? 20 times 6? I don't know. Each jar holds 20 or 30 gallons. So let's say 20 gallons per 6 jars, that's 120 gallons. 120 gallons of the best wine that people will ever taste. That's what Jesus brought. So God is in the business of always providing not just good things, but the very best. And I can tell you, I can testify to that. In the 47 years that I've lived, I have witnessed God always providing what's best. And this is the insane thing. Like, and I hope you will relate to this. Like, I had something that I thought was good, and then God gave me the best when I ran out of that. But then when that best ran out, God gave me what? Something better than the best. And it always keeps increasing. The best always gets better. Isn't that crazy? Like, I'll give you a couple of examples in my life. When I was in Michigan, well, when I was in Puerto Rico, I was a teacher, and I loved my job, and I loved the place I was working. But then when I moved to Michigan. And in Michigan, I struggled trying to find a good job. For years, I could only find like a contractor's kind of job. I couldn't find a teaching job. Finally, I got a job at Battle Creek Academy, which is the first Adventist school that ever existed. And I enjoy it. I mean, I was having a blast. I love my job. I enjoy working with the students, because it's actually, working in a school is always an adventure because every day is different. And then I lost that job because I was homeschooling my kids. And policy said that teachers have to send their kids to schools that are Adventist, otherwise they won't be hired. So after praying with my wife, we decided, you know what, we're going to stick to what we feel the Lord is calling us to do. So they didn't renew my contract. So I was looking for a job. So I had an awesome job in Puerto Rico, which was replaced with a great job that I had in Michigan for 5 years. And then I could only find a job as a chaplain in the mountains of Idaho. And at first, it was like going from a Ferrari to a Prius. Little did I know that my life and experiences in Idaho will be the very best so far. Are you tracking? Like, it was good, I lost it, I ran out, and then got replaced with something far better. And then when that ran out, got replaced with something even better. And I lived 8 years in Idaho. And then we moved to Florida, which was like going from a Prius to a bicycle, in our estimation. Because Idaho has beautiful mountains, lakes, rivers. There are no alligators in Idaho. Where we live, there were not even venomous snakes because it's too cold. And we're like, going to Florida? God, what are you doing? And little did we know that moving here will turn out to be also best, the best. Because God is in the business of not just giving good things, He wants to give you the best. And every time the best is replaced by something even better. So, I don't know what you're experiencing. Right now, I'm just patiently waiting for God to do something in my life, because, and I'm sorry, I have to say this again. It seems like I always talk about this in my sermons lately. I have a car, the Mini Cooper, that got fixed the other day, and the day afterwards got broke down again. And I'm like, God, what are you doing? I don't understand. But I'm waiting patiently because I firmly believe that God is going to give me something better. He's going to give me the best so far. I don't know how that will look like. I'm hoping it will be a Tesla, but maybe it won't be a Tesla. Maybe it will be, I don't know, a Prius. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's going to be better than what I have now. And that's the way God operates. What is it that you're running out of in your life right now? What is that good thing that you are losing right now? And in your mind, you're going like, if I lose this, that's it. I will never have anything better than this. And God is saying, hold on. You'll never have anything better than this? I can give you anything. Actually, I've prepared this moment so that I can give you the very best. That's Jesus. The couple at the banquet and the master of ceremony didn't know what happened or what supernatural thing occurred with the water, but Jesus did it anyways. You might not even know that it was God giving you the best job, that it was God giving you the best relationship, that it was God giving you the best car, that it was God giving you the best place to live, That it was God leading you to the best place to worship Him. But God is orchestrating things to always give you absolutely the best. And the last lesson that I'm drawing from this story, Jesus is willing and able to do, it's supposed to say, supernatural things for you. I love this because in the story, Jesus actually didn't change or turn water into wine. Jesus actually changed the chemical structure of water so that it can turn into wine. I don't know if that makes sense to you. Jesus is willing to do supernatural things with one purpose. Let's read verse 11. John chapter 2, verse 11. Notice what it says. This miraculous sign at Cana in Galilee was the first time Jesus revealed His glory, and His disciples what? Believed Him. The only reason why God is willing and able to do supernatural things, defying all natural phenomena, is with one purpose in mind: for you to believe Him. I mean, again, the Bible is full of those stories. God transforms things, our lives, relationships. Whatever it is that needs to be changed and transformed in your life right now, God is willing to do a supernatural thing, a supernatural transformation, so that you can believe Him. There are two stories in the Bible that I shared with you, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, that prove this point. Remember Joshua chapter 10, when Joshua is in battle and he asked God to stop the sun? Remember the story? And God actually stopped the sun. Well, not the sun, because we know, well, based on science, the sun doesn't move. It's the planets that move around the sun. So God actually stopped the rotation of our planet to answer one man's prayer so that Joshua may believe God. And everyone else there. And not only everyone else there, millennia afterwards, us sitting right here reading the Bible, we read the story and we know God stopped the rotation of Earth? That will cause, actually, if it would happen without God's intervention, a global catastrophe. Everyone will die instantly, pretty much, if the Earth stops rotating. There's another story that I share with you in Isaiah chapter 38, where King Hezekiah asked the Lord to give him some extra time to live. And God sent the prophet Isaiah to tell the king, the Lord heard your prayer, you're going to live X amount of extra years. And then the king said, how would I know? Notice, the king is doubting the word of the prophet. How would I know that this is true? And even in his doubt, the prophet goes to God and God says, okay, tell him, there's a sundial outside. Do you want me to move time forward or backwards? And the king said, I want time to go backwards, because going forward is easy. That's natural. But going backwards, that will never happen. And God says, okay. So actually the sundial, instead of going forward, went backwards. Do you get what must have happened in order for that to happen? For time to go backwards? I don't know how God did it, but scientifically, the only explanation is to rotate planet Earth backwards. And God did it. And this is not just a science fiction story. This is real. God did that to answer one man's prayer. How would I know that I'm going to be healed and I'm going to live longer? Well, I'm willing to go back in time for you to believe me. Church, to me this is amazing, because God is willing and able to do whatever supernatural thing in your life if it's going to help you believe. Which brings me to the next point. Faith is never blind. I know we've heard that we need to follow Jesus with blind faith, like, yeah, I'm going to trust him. I don't know, whatever, but I'm going to. No. God always gives you evidence. God always somehow gives you some tangible evidence of who he is and what he's doing. Of course, there's going to be a measure of your faith, but it's not a blind faith. It's not like you're stepping in nothing. No, you're stepping into something that requires some faith, but it's faith based on God. You look around, God is giving you evidence left and right that he loves you, that he cares for you, that he has not let you alone. So whatever it is that you're going through right now, remember that you're not alone and that God is able and willing to do whatever supernatural thing must be done for your belief. At the end of his gospel, John writes this in chapter 20. Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these, the ones I wrote, John is saying, are written so that you may come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that through believing you may have life in his name. Church, God is doing things in your life and in my life. And not only that, God even uses the bad things that are happening in our life to turn them into a blessing so that we can believe. There is no excuse. Actually, at the beginning of his book, John says that Jesus, the light, came into the world, and the light shines to all mankind. Jesus is shining his life to everyone. Those that believe and even those that don't believe. Because he's after, he's looking for, he desires that everyone will get to know him. And if that is going to happen by him turning water into wine, he's going to do it. If you believe and it's going to take for you to walk on water, he's going to make it happen. If he needs to stop the rotation of the earth so that you may believe, God is going to do whatever, whenever, so that you can get to know him and believe him. Because after all, when you know who he is, you'll realize that God has never abandoned you, that he's always been by your side, that he's been the one that's been giving you the best things so far in your life, and he will continue to give you the very best. Why? Not because he has to, not because we deserve it. The only reason why God does that is because he absolutely loves you and loved me. When we come to believe in him is my prayer. God bless you.